2 lessons that we didn't finish from my lessons that when I ended in February on sanctification. We were going through that. And we were looking at different seasons of our lives. We all go through different seasons. The Lord puts us in different seasons for a purpose, for reasons. And each one of those, how we approach those, our mindset, and what we think about as we go through those will impact whether we're faithful or whether we're not, whether we grow in our sanctification or whether we don't grow. And Lord, a lot of times, if he loves us, will continue to give us those lessons to learn, and sometimes they can even get more difficult for us to get our attention if it doesn't get our attention. So the thing is, learn the lessons right now. Easiest way is we're going to look today at how we should approach these, what our mindset should be, and do those things, and watch how the Lord blesses in our lives in those ways. So we started last week, and if you have, I think it's page 59 for most of you. Could be 60, but whichever one has number 4, season 4 on it. And we looked at and we started the season of when you are lacking, whether it's financially, physically, you're missing something. We've all been there in our lives. If you haven't, you probably will be or should be. The Lord will bless us with those types of seasons for reasons. And so how we look at that on our mindset. Remember the verse that we looked at, Romans 12:2. Be ye transformed. How? By the renewing of your mind. Change the way you think. How are we supposed to think? Bible, I just answered it. Like this, biblically. Okay? Think the way the Bible teaches us to think. Okay? That's not natural. Okay? It's supernatural. It's different than the way we think about things, the way the world thinks. It's different. Read this, study this, know this, and change the way you think and the way you live, according to this. That's Romans 12:2. That's sanctification. And that's what we're looking at as we go through these seasons. So I'm going to do a quick review to catch us up. We're on, again, 59, season 4. We looked at the first thing to consider is consider the dangerous and snaring temptations that come with a pleasant and prosperous condition. When things are going well in your life, you understand? When this seems to be going smooth and it's wonderful and blessing in all these areas, that is a great temptation in our lives. What's the great temptation in our lives when things are doing that? It's like, forget the Lord. Things are going well. I can handle this. Life's going great. Lord, oh yeah, almost forgot you were there. I haven't talked to you, thought about you a couple weeks. Things are going great. That's the temptation. That's the problem. And if you have a life blessed with this kind of prosperous, we're going to talk about this in our next season, it can be really a curse in your life. Because who cares if you have a wonderful 80 years on this life and then go spend eternity in hell? What have you gained? You're going to remember, boy, those were a good 80 years. I know those were 10 million years ago that I've been in hell for 10 million years, but those were a good 80 years. Can you see the foolishness of how we live our lives? So, the first one is consider that great temptation. Remember this, we'll talk about it more, but I love this phrase, the thing about this is, spiritual riches trump earthly riches every time. You ever played euchre? Who plays euchre in here? All right. You know what that means when it trumps it. Okay. Spiritual blessings. What are spiritual? Well, we'll talk about those later. I won't go farther than that. But remember that. Spiritual blessings always outweigh. But we go, but I want the earthly blessings. I want it. I don't. And we ignore and forget all that we have and the Lord has given us for eternity. All right. That was the first thing we looked at. The second thing we looked at last week was when God leaves you in those situations, it's never without a promise. He's always there. He's got promises that he is going to take care of you. He will meet your needs. It may be not all your wants. You may not have what everybody else has. That's never a promise. Do you understand that? We want that. We think that's what it should be. God's never promised that. God's promised to give us what we need and to take care of us at that moment. We will always have what we need. So if you're lacking something at that moment, guess what? You're supposed to be lacking for it at that moment. There's a purpose. God hasn't forgot you. God's got there. There's a purpose. There's a reason. There's a plan. So be faithful through that. And knowing that the Lord will take care of you. Knowing that the Lord will take care of you. Then we looked at, if you're at 59, now you're on page 60. In fact, that's good enough. Let's just move, or we're going to go on. Well, let's do this. If you look at number 3 there, above C, I. Though he will not indulge in humor your wanton appetites, what we just said, he will not violate his promises. So remember that just because we don't have everything we want doesn't mean that God's not taking care of us. What's he always tell us? What's the Bible tell us? If we have these 2 things, we should be content. If we have 2 things, food and clothing. Food and clothing. Bible tells us we should be content with those things. That's what Jesus had. Food, and he was hungry at times. But he was fed later. But he did go hungry at times. So, remember what the promises are. We have a lifetime of eternity, of full abundance going to be met. Now, you know, why does the Lord do this sometimes? Let's just go back to that real quick, off the subject. Why does he put us in these situations of wanting and lack at times? He thinks it's funny? I hope you don't think that. Why does he do this? There's a reason. Test and refine us. What's the test? To conform us. It's going to conform us. But what's the test? What's he testing us? What are we going to find out when God puts us in these situations? What are we going to find out and through this test? We need him. We can trust him. That's a perfect right there. Yeah. I think that God's going to come back and tell you is, am I enough? You understand? That's the most important question and test God's going to give every one of you. If he hasn't done it yet, he will. But I bet he has. And I bet there'll be more coming at some point. And the Lord says, you had this. What if you don't have that? Am I still enough? Or because you lack this, you don't want me anymore? You know what that says? You love that more than you loved God. So a lot of times the Lord takes things away or puts us in situations where we do without to say, do you still love me in this case? Am I enough? Am I your true love? Am I your joy? Do you find your joy, your satisfaction in me or in this? Here's a tough one. What if something happens to one of your children? I think I don't know. Maybe you can think of something else. I can't think of anything else. That's a greater test, at least for me. If something happens to your children, and you do this. But whose children are they? The Lord's. Do you have an eternity? Their soul? Yes. They're with them. The Lord takes care of them, watch over them? Yes. So sometimes the Lord may even take our children. Is that enough? Did it with Job. Jesus, God's own son, gave him up. All these things. Those are what the tests are about. What we want to do is focus on eternity. Focus on this life, on all that. When I focus on just this life, I look around me and I go, this is more than I can bear. This isn't what I want. This is, and we become frustrated. We become lacking of faith all the way down. And that's why we always lift our eyes up, look to eternity on these. See the Lord's plan in all these things. See that if anything happens to my children, I'm with them in eternity. If they're his, in that way. That's what we trust in the Lord. That's where we lift our eyes and live in those times. Okay, let's get back to the subject. I'm on number C on page 60, if you're on 60, I'm sorry about the confusion. I love this one. Think about this. If it's bad now, if you're in a bad situation right now, a very difficult situation, it might have been worse. Has God denied you the comforts of this life? Maybe there's something you're lacking and you're missing and you're upset right now because of that. He might have denied you Christ. He might have denied you peace. He might have denied you pardon. Then your situation would truly be hopeless. You ever think about that? And you're going through difficult times, no matter where you are, what you're going through, what difficulty you're in right now, if you're His, your sins are forgiven. Once for all, completed, done by Christ, dealt with, over. Your righteousness, His righteousness is in our account. Okay, we've been reconciled. We're His. We're adopted into His family now. Never to be snatched out of His hand. And we have forgiveness. We have in eternity. Remember, Jeremy and I didn't conspire last week, but we had the exact same illustration. Remember what it was? Our lives right now are like little dot a time. Even if it's 1,000 years, millennium, it's a dot compared to eternity that goes on and on. That's what we have. That's what's coming. Do you understand that? If you're His, that's in your bank. That's there. That's what we have. And so if I have to put up with some difficulty right now and trust Him, maybe it's so I learned something, but you know what else it's for? It's that those around me may see me trusting the Lord. Like Job, he had an audience watching even from heaven him to see if he's going to be faithful. We can have the same thing. Be faithful through those. Keep your mind set on eternity and what you have. Number one, learn to set spiritual riches over temporal poverty. Balance all your present troubles with your spiritual privileges. Remember them. List them. If you don't think forgiveness is a big thing, I'm going to question whether you know the Lord. That's huge. That we are forgiven of all that we've done against the holy, infinite, righteous God. Okay. Questions, comments? I've been rattling on. Anybody else going to say something? Okay. All right, just interrupt me. D, if it's bad now, it will be better shortly. How do we know? What do you mean? Objection. But I may die from this lacking. I'm so hungry, I'm going to die. All right. Whoever has done so. There's been Christians through the years, but is that a common thing that we see? That God forsakes and lacks His own and does those things? No. When were the righteous forsaken? Then I like this one. Let's put this. But if you do die from this, your journey is ended, you're fully supplied. Do you know death? Remember we took this earlier, some other ones. Death cures everything. If you're ill, sick, getting old like me, where it feels like that, even though you're not, and you do those things, death cures all that. It's a cure. Do you understand? Absent with Him, absent with this body, we're present with Him, and it's better, Paul says, immediately. It's appointed unto man once to die, and then the judgment. When we die, you're either in heaven, well, not the final lake of fire, and not the final eternity, but when we die, we are instantly either judged and with Him in paradise, or we're in Sheol and Hades. It's instant, the judgment on that. And that we are instantly with Him if we're His. All right, and if you do die, think about this. We're going to talk about this in my next class. Providence, sovereignty of God. That won't be till November. But if you do die, even for those lack of things, what does that tell us? I know this might be hard to get, but what's that tell us about providence? If you die, did you catch God? Whoa, I missed that one. God says, I'm sorry. I didn't see that car coming. I looked over here real quick, and there came that car. So, no. Is that how God's providence works? So what do we know if we die? It's our appointed time. All the days, Psalm 139, all of our days are written in his book before they even happen. It's all there. There's an appointed time for all things that God has for us. So even if that happens, it's only happening in the plan and purposes of God. It's our appointed time to go be with him. And our eternity starts. Our eternity starts. Objection 2. But I'm not sure of heaven. If I would, I would be a different matter. I just don't know if I'm going to go to heaven or not. And then I love this is Flavel's answers. John Flavel's the Puritan that I'm using this book on all these. If this is your situation, then you have greater concerns than your poverty. Okay? Don't worry about being poor or not having something. Deal with that issue first. Commit your life to the Lord. Put your faith in him. And then trust and know by the word that you are his. Okay? Find your security there. Poverty is not your problem if that's what you are feeling at that moment. This is Flavel quoting, "He who seriously asks such questions as these, what shall I do to be saved? How shall I know my sin is forgiven? Does not usually trouble themselves with what shall I eat, what shall I drink, with what shall I be clothed?" E. Does it fit the children of God, the children of such a father, to distrust his all-sufficiency or complain of any of his actions? This one hits me. This one hits me hard as I went through when I was studying this and going through. Number one, does it benefit you to question his care and love upon every new crisis? Do you ever have that? How many crises has the Lord brought you through in your life? Thousands that I've gone. You go into that. Here's a problem. How's it going to work out? I don't see how this is going to work out. This is so difficult. Where's it going to go? This is going to ruin. This is going to be everything. And then it works through, and the Lord brings about his ways and his timing and brings you through that. And he brings it through that. How many times? And then the next one comes. Oh, here it is again. What are we going to do? And we fret, and we do that every time something new comes. 2, and this is one that hit me. Have you not been ashamed of doing this in the past crisis? Don't you do that? I do it when you're done, and you've been anxious, you've been lacking of faith, and go through those difficulties, and the Lord brings about ways you go, wow. And then I look back and I go, why didn't I just trust him? Begin with this at the beginning. Why didn't I do that? Why didn't I just rest in him and just wait and watch for him to act? And when he does, wait for his timing to do that. No, and that's not what we just said here. It's never not commit your needs. I can see we do bring our needs, but I bring those needs with almost an attitude of, and I wouldn't say this, but it's in my heart of, how dare you put me through this, or what are you doing, God, type of thing, the questioning of his goodness. That's the issue. God tells us to bring our needs to him absolutely every day, all the time. Bring those. We can even bring those weeping and with sorrow and with great emotion and those things. It's that attitude of somehow that I'm not trusting his goodness at this moment. That's what I struggle sometimes. And you almost get angry with God in that way. Versus, that's different than bringing a need to him, or my confess and doing those things. It's that type of thing. And maybe I'm the only one, but I struggle with that at times. And especially and I'm learning, and you go through this, and you go, and when you're done, you go, I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed. And you confess that and go, Lord, I should never doubt you again, and I won't until the next time. There are times, sometimes, and I'll be honest with you, this happened in my life, the milk truck doesn't break down outside, and the bread doesn't come at that moment, okay? And so at that point, you go hungry for a while. Again, Christ was hungry for at times, and then was fed. But God will bless. It's the different times. It's just learning. And what I'm trying to do now is I pray whenever I go into any kind of different situation. My first prayer I wanted to bring up is, Lord, I said, Lord, you've been faithful so many times, over and over and over. So I can trust you here. I don't know how, don't know when. Doesn't really matter how or when. I'm going to trust you in this. I'm just going to rest and wait and watch and just trust you in this. That's what we want to have. That honors him. That's what, and he deserves that. He deserves to be trusted. He's shown himself faithful. That's what we should do in our lives. I think the last, number 3, let me see. Has he not proven trustworthy in the past, and yet will you renew your unworthy suspicions of him again? That's the difference. We talk about versus just giving our needs. It's almost an unworthy suspicion. Is he really going to come through? Is he really God? Is he really good? Is he really someone I can trust in this? I don't know. And you go, how many, if I'm God, I'd be saying, how many times have I bailed you out and been through this, and you still don't trust me? That's how I picture him. That's not how God reacts. That's how I think he should react to me. But his grace, his mercy, his patience. It's amazing we have a God like that. I'm on page 61. I hope you're on 61. If not 60, I don't want to, but all right, about poverty. Your poverty is not your sin. Do you understand that? Sometimes we think poverty is a sin, or lacking, or going without. Told you last week, one time we couldn't even find a dime to go get an ice cream cone. Well, we're going to get paid for another couple of days, weeks. So we went out with no ice cream. That surely there's got to be one in the car somewhere. If you look under the seats, no dime. But those are good for us to go through. And we look back and we see the purposes. But your poverty is not your sin. But your affliction only. It's an affliction. It's a testing. It's a time. If you've not brought it upon yourselves by sinful means, think about it. How do we bring it about by sinful means? If you've got 10 credit cards and they're all at $10,000 each, and so you got $100,000 debt and you're struggling to make the bills, that's probably not an affliction. As you go through those, as you work through that. If we look at sinful means, but for the most part, our poverty is just a station the Lord has for us. And it's also for those who have to help meet those who don't. It's an opportunity for that. That should be going on. And vice versa. And those without and lacking, go without for a while at times and trust the Lord to meet those. It's all part of his plan. But if it's not sin, if it's just an affliction, it may be endured more easily for us if we keep that in mind. All right, I want to move on to season 5. We should have time to hopefully get through all season 5. But almost the opposite of season 4. Season 4 is not having things and lacking. Season 5 now is when you have is there anybody here who says they have all the blessings and everything met? None of us would raise our hands, right? Some days you're close, but we all get this. But I would bet 95, if not close to 100% in this room, probably will fall closer into that category in areas, especially if you look at all around the world and compare us with different things. The Lord has blessed us with much more than we need. Food and clothing, be content. If anybody struggled with food and clothing this week, if you did, we do have a deacon's fund here. So seriously, those that do struggle and those things, we do meet those needs of the church. But if you didn't struggle with those two things, you're probably closer to the second category that we're in right now. Times of prosperity. So A, consider the dangerous and snaring temptations that come with a pleasant and prosperous condition. Few of those who live in the pleasures and prosperity of this world escape everlasting punishment. Do you get that? Matthew 19:24. If I don't have to look it up once I start it, it's easier for a camel to what? Go through eye of a needle than for a rich man to be saved. Okay. How hard is it for a camel to go through an eye of a needle? It's impossible. Okay. So that's how hard it is for a rich man to be saved. So now who wants to be rich? So rich that, see, it shouldn't be hard, but don't we still all push and strive? And but understand that the riches are coming. The riches are coming in our eternity. We have the inheritance of Christ. It's coming. And if the Lord blesses us here beyond our needs, that's wonderful. We praise Him. We need to praise Him. We're going to go through all things we should do. But it's not the goal. It's not the end game of what we try to do, even though all of us are going to struggle with that in our hearts. We had a person, just as a side note, if I don't have time, I'm going to do it anyway. I was taught as a young, I don't know, see if anybody else was, that verse about the camel going through an eye of a needle. There was a gate, someone said, in Israel. There's a very narrow gate that only like one person could get through. It wasn't your normal wide gate. And so what this meant was when you tried to bring the camel through that gate, he had to take stuff off his backs. You know what I mean? Just take it all off so he could get through this eye of the needle gate. Okay. That's what I was taught. Yeah. Anybody else taught that? Okay. There's been a few. But, and so the point was, it wasn't that it was impossible for a rich man to be saved, like going through an eye of a needle. It's that he'd have to give up all his riches off his back like a camel to get through it. That was the lesson. Okay. Well, I went to Israel, and I laughed. I shouldn't laugh, but if you go to Israel, there's a model of the whole of Jerusalem all laid out. It's a great big thing. It's an amazing thing to look at. Lays out the whole, and the person was going through the Palestinian guide that we have was going through all of it. One lady raised her hand and said, "Where's the eye of the needle gate at?" And the guy goes, "What?" And she goes, "The eye of the needle gate. Where the camel goes in." And he goes, I have no idea what you're talking about. He goes, "What? What are you talking about?" And she goes into verse about the eye. And finally the pastor goes over and says, "There is no such thing as the eye of the needle gate." Okay. So if you're ever taught that there is no such thing as that, that is not the proper interpretation of that. It is a eye of a needle for a camel to get through, and it's impossible for them. All right. Okay. Back to our lesson. Here's something else that we should consider these times. To keep us humbler and watchful in times of prosperity, it would be helpful to consider that many Christians have been much the worse for it. Does anybody have an NIV Bible? I want to read this in the NIV. I got the NESV. You got that? Jeremiah 2, if you'll turn there, verses 2, 3, 7, 13, and 31. Jeremiah 2, 2 and 3 to start with.
Israel was holiness to the Lord, the first fruits of his increase. All that devour him will offend. Disaster will come upon them, says the Lord.
All right. This is when they were going through. Read the first verse again. Let me so I get it right.
Israel was holiness to the Lord, the
Israel was holiness to the Lord. They were righteous. They followed after him. They trusted and was faithful to him early in the time when they were struggling out in the early times of their wilderness journeys. But then go on. Let's read what happens as go to verse 13. Let's read or 7, verse 7.
I brought you into a bountiful country to eat its fruits and its goodness. But when you entered, you defiled my land and made my heritage an abomination.
All right, so when they're out in the wilderness, they were holiness to him. Now he brings them into a fruitful land, blesses them in many ways, and they turn their back on God in that way. You can see this is what blessings, riches can do to us. All right? We may not like our times of struggles, but can I ask you, when have you grown the most in your life with the Lord? Can you be honest? Is it your times of great blessings or your times of great difficulty? Great difficulty is when I've grown the most in my life. And the question is, do you value growth with God? Or do you value this? I want riches. I don't care about growth and knowing God. Okay? And see, here's what happens with most of us as human beings. As we get rich, we get fat, we get blessings, we get all this. We don't care about the Lord anymore. This is pretty good. I'll take this. When it's difficult and there's nothing else to hold on to, and you reach up and grab a hold of God, that's when we grow. That's when we see the importance and the value and the trueness of God. Let's read 13:31, just so I've got those. 13 and 31, the verse.
For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewn themselves cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water.
All right, this is what happens when we get rich. We get our own cisterns. We don't need God's cisterns anymore. We got our own. What do we need him for? 31.
O generation, see the word of the Lord. Have I been a wilderness to Israel, or a land of darkness? Why do my people say, we are Lord's, we will come no more to you?
Yeah, right, that's good. So there's the picture of with nothing in the wilderness, they're faithful, they're with the Lord there. When things get in the land, they're fat, they're rich, we don't need him. They depart and go. And so it's a lesson for our lives. It's always keep this. Is my heart there? Is that the way I'm acting right now? Am I enjoying my blessings, not acknowledging they're from God, and not sharing with others, not seeing his purposes in any of these things? Is that how I live? Or do I? And Job had great riches and was a righteous man on the earth. So riches doesn't mean that you automatically do that. But it's a great, great temptation. Most men will fail in that. Most men and women will fail in that. All right. I think to follow up with that, think of how many people have dearly paid with their riches and could not purchase what God only freely gives. Freely gives it. And I bet how many rich men in hell would go back and give up their riches to be with God. All right, C. Let's wrap. We'll move along here. Consider that God does not place a greater value on a person for these things. Who has someone like 1 Peter 3 and 4. We always think if someone's blessed and they're rich and they're doing this, God must love them more. God must value them more. God must be more pleased with them. 1 Peter 3 and 4. Go ahead, Carrie.
Whose adorning let it not be the outward adorning, the plaiting of the hair, the wearing of gold, or the putting on of apparel, but let it be the hidden man of the heart, which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great value.
All right, what's great value to God? From that verse. What's here. What's in our insight. That's a great value. That's what God values. That's what he looks at. That's what he sees. That's what he wants. And a lot of times, to have that interior like this, a lot of times we have to have difficult times. We have to go without in order to be conformed, to be changed, to cultivate that kind of a inner heart that has great value for the Lord, has eternal values for the Lord. D, consider how many people at the end of their lives have regretted the single pursuit of prosperity in their lives. Have you ever seen people do that? Oops. Shouldn't talk with my hands.
Put the wire behind your shirt.
Okay. That's on. This is what I hit this. Have you ever seen anybody that was the pursuit? Did all that. They spent the hours, slaved away at work, did all those things, lost their family, lost everything, but ended up with what they thought they wanted at the end. These great riches or great status, great power, whatever, and they literally have nothing at the end when they're done. I always liken it. Someone taught me earlier the analogy of is you put your ladder on against something and you start climbing the ladder. Just make sure it's against the right wall. So when you get to the top, it's where you're meant to be. Because don't put it against the thing. You get there and you go, what did I do all this for? I've got nothing. When you get to the top, make sure you put your ladder against the right wall. E, consider what a clogging nature earthly things are to a soul firmly engaged in the way to heaven. Have you ever thought about that? I always think about this. This is why I like studying eschatology, and that's why I studied it when I was younger, when I was 19. What it is, it gave me, it's not the idea to know everything and do it, but it gave me a settledness, a picture of where things were going. And this was it. And it got your eyes up out of your situation. It goes, here's what's really important. Here's where we're going with this. And that's what we need to keep that in our mind of our lives all the time, is every moment thinking about, because we got all these things we're trying to get done during the day, all these things done during the week, trying to get this, a list done. I'm a list person in my mind, head type thing, check mark. And we need to make sure that we're really doing the things that when I've been in heaven, you've been in heaven for 10,000 years, we're going to go, that was worth it. That was worth it, what I did and what was important. And look at all the things that we do that in light of that, we're going to go, you know what? That wasn't important. That wasn't important at all. And I spent so much time on it, so much area doing this. And it really wasn't that important on those. Always look and keep your eyes focused on eternity and look back to where we are now and adjust our lives accordingly. It's simple. We should be doing that all the time. If not daily, at least weekly, doing that assessment of our lives. Because there's so many things that will clog up in this earth that will go, it had no eternal value for us. F, consider we will give an account of the mercies that God has given us. Luke 12:48. It's kind of a scary verse. Someone want to read that? Go ahead, Dean. All right, to him as much given, much will be expected. Now, in this room, who in here has been given much? I should see every hand up. Because not only are we blessed way beyond our needs, but we have been blessed with tremendous teaching and preaching of word through the years here, all these different things, all the light that's been given to us, all these things, this we've been given much. Much is expected from us. Okay? So don't desire to get a whole lot sometimes. I'm talking not a whole lot of teaching. Please don't do that. Don't interpret that. But a whole lot of blessings and riches and things, because it's just more than what's expected of us. What have you done with it? You're going to stand there. What have you done with it? The more you have, the more is expected. The Bible doesn't write verses for nothing. It's not there for nothing. And you know what's even scarier? I didn't read the verse, but if you teach, you're even held more accountable. And I go, why am I up here right now? Why am I up here? So it's not to scare us away from these things and doing these things. It's focus on these things. Use these things. Use it in the right way. Don't look at the blessing as something for you to hoard and keep and take. It's for you to bless, you to be around, you to honor the Lord with, and all that the Lord has blessed us with. Let's see, where am I at? G. Last thing, and more. It is a very humbling consideration if the mercies of God should work differently upon my spirit than they did upon the spirits of others. It's a fancy way of saying other people have been blessed with many blessings, and we see this in Scripture over and over. And those blessings had an impact on their lives in a certain way. I want to make sure that those things have those same kind of impact in my life as it had in theirs. I don't want it to be different. And what you see, we aren't going to have time to go through all these, but let me just read one to get you to understand this. Genesis 32:10. Someone read that. And 2 Samuel 7:18. You got 2 Samuel? All right. Genesis 32:10. Someone who will do that. I'll grab it. All right. Listen to what Jacob says here. Genesis 32:10. I am unworthy of all the loving kindness and of all the faithfulness which you have shown to your servant. For with my staff only I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two companies. Jacob said, I had nothing when I first came, and now look what the Lord has blessed me with, all this. He goes, who am I to have this? That was his reaction. Humbleness. I can't believe the Lord did this for me. Why? Go ahead and read, Zach. Yeah, this is David. After he's just been given the Davidic covenant about how he's going to have forever and ever the throne. Yeah, who am I? This is what our reaction should be when the Lord blesses us. Who are we to have this? A lot of times it's about time, or it's, I've done a lot of good things for you, Lord. This is just payback. I'm glad finally now. And we're not that brash usually, but in our minds we still think we're owed this. We're owed this. God should give us all this. I should have all this. When the reaction should be, who are we to have this? Lord, I'm a sinner. I fail all the time. And you've blessed me with this and all these things. Who am I? Give me humbleness. We won't have time to read the rest, but I'm going to let you get the idea of how you go back and look at these. We should magnify God's glory, not ourselves, and not just looking at any further than our comfort in these things. David is an example of that. Also, if you go back and read those, where his reaction is to glorify and praise God. God just delivers him from his enemies in this area, and he praises God for that, magnifies him. That's what we should do whenever we receive blessings, magnify him. See, it's causing them to love the God of the mercy, causing them to love the God of the mercy, not just the mercy of the God. You ever understand that? Catch the difference? It's not just loving what God does for me. And as long as he keeps doing this stuff, I love him. But learning to love the God of those mercies. That was the reaction of Hannah. That was the reaction of Mary. You can go back and read those. They went back. They loved God and honored him through what he had done. It wasn't just the blessing that they loved and honored. And D, providing restraints against sin. Ezra, if you go back and read, because you blessed us so much, Lord, in all these ways, we will obey you, your commandments and your ways. You've proven yourself. Does your blessings prompt that into your life? To be more obedient? It should. That's what Ezra did. And also, the last one, if you have it on the other page, is made them more fit for service with Jehoshaphat. That's what they should have on us. So we've got to watch that we don't just get caught up enjoying the blessing, get caught up and concentrated on just the earthly value of that blessing. Do that. Understand it's from a God to an undeserving person, who God is to be honored and blessed in that. It's to be shared and given out into his purposes for others as he sees fits and brings our way. And just to make sure that we don't get caught up and let those things carry us away from God. That's what prosperity can do. Always check those things in your life.